Thank you so much for tuning in to WZNC LP Bethlehem. You're listening to North Country Community Radio, 99.9 FM, streaming online at nococommunityradio.org. You are listening to Amanda McKeen. This is my show called North of Normal. I'm on every Tuesday from 10 to noon. And most of you who have listened before know that from 10 to 11, I have a guest on and I interview them, and we have real conversations, totally unscripted, and the mission has been and always has been to create an unfiltered, human-centered space where local leaders, business owners, and change makers share their stories, perspectives, and passions, not to be promotional, but actually to connect with the community. North of Normal celebrates what makes our North Country community rich, real, and worth rooting into. And today, things are getting especially north. Those of you who follow me on social media know it's coming. My guest this week actually had to cancel due to illness, unfortunately, and I think this is going around so we can all relate. But rather than scramble to find somebody to fill this spot, I decided to do something scary and something that probably no one's done before here at NCCR, and not sure if anywhere. But I'm going to let my dear, wonderful cat, William Wallace, interview me today. I know that sounds really nuts, and if you didn't think I was crazy already, you know I am now. I'm about to be in a very vulnerable position, and as I was preparing for today, I started feeling really nervous, and I thought, oh my gosh, is this what all my guests go through? Because it is vulnerable to sit not knowing where the conversation's going to go, and to trust yourself to say what's in your heart without anything getting in the way. And so William Wallace is here to help me stay close to my heart. William Wallace has been in my life for the last 7 years. He knows me better than anybody at this point. He is known as the unofficial mayor of Littleton. He's a silent observer not only of Main Street, but of my daily life. He is a published blogger. He has written one blog, and that has been shared with the community and actually in the newspaper. And he has graciously agreed to ask me some questions today. He is wise, he's very curious, and he is, just a heads up, deeply judgmental, but in the most loving way. He insisted on writing down his questions ahead of time because he's a little nervous about being live. So I've got these questions here. I'm going to read them out loud, and then I'm going to answer them unscripted, which I am a little nervous about, but I think we got this. William Wallace once wrote something really wise and deep. He said, "Legacy is not something we chase. It's something we live. We leave our mark every day on the furniture, on the people we love, and on anyone lucky enough to scratch behind our ears." So today, in the spirit of truth and fur and emotional support, I give you William Wallace interviewing me, Amanda McKeen. And you may hear him speaking a little bit in the background. We're just gonna... He doesn't have his own mic. I figured this mic would pick him up anyways. So William Wallace's first question, and I'm just going to kind of go down through these as he wrote them. Why can't I have treats after every meal? Oh, really? That's your first question, William? Well, William, if you remember 2 years ago, you were twice your size. You weighed 18 pounds. I think now you weigh around 9 or 10. And you were at liberty to eat whatever you wanted back then. And you showed me that that wasn't something you could handle. So that's why you can't have treats every meal. Let's move on to the next question. Let's hope this gets a little bit deeper for our audience. Next question. When do I get to sleep in your bed all night? William, I feel like you're taking advantage of this time and the fact that we have listeners, but I'm just going to be real with you. Until you can leave me alone the entire night, you're going to have to sleep in your own room. And that's final. I know, it's not fair. Next question. Why do you tell people you're single when we both know we live together? All right, William, I don't tell people I'm single. I usually just say that it's complicated. So let's keep moving. Next question. Why? No, that's inappropriate. We're not talking about that at all. Okay. Let's get to something real here. Oh, here's a good one. Why do you sit at the computer so much instead of on the couch with me? This is a good one, William. I think we can get some depth here. Well, I do work remotely, and you have most of my life, our lives together, you've seen me working remotely. But most recently, I have started my own business called Clearview Advantage. And Clearview Advantage is an online reputation management firm that I created for rural America, because that service wasn't really geared towards smaller businesses and individuals that still needed that help but couldn't necessarily afford the higher prices. And the deeper mission behind Clearview Advantage is that I aim to bring truth, clarity, and structure to small businesses in visibility online, empowering owners to stand proudly in their reputation and show up with purpose every day. So all that to say, being online is scary. It's a vulnerable place because you've seen what happens. Things get taken out of context. Comment threads can run rampant. Things can be misunderstood. People can be misread, or people can be invisible. And none of those things feel very good. And my goal with Clearview Advantage, especially for the North Country, is to help our small businesses and individuals that are mission-driven to feel supported in showing up online the same way that they show up in real life. So it is possible, I'm discovering, to be the same person that you are face-to-face with someone and be that person online as well. It takes effort and it takes some strategy, but the goal is that when people are searching for you or your services, that number one, they find you, first of all, that you're not invisible, but number two, that they feel exactly and walk away knowing exactly who you are, who you serve, and why you do it. And so when somebody can emotionally resonate with someone's online presence, it generates trust. And trust nowadays, as we all know, is being found online first, not so much face-to-face. We're all Googling, we're all looking things up, we're using ChatGPT, and what we find there is how we determine the decisions that we make. So my goal is to help our small businesses be there, and to be there in an effective way where they get chosen and they get trusted. So the vision is a future where visibility is deeply human, that reputation is earned through service, and small businesses succeed by showing up authentically. I saw in my former role at a national online reputation management firm that presence was not authentic in a lot of cases, and these businesses and high net worth individuals, quickly lost trust because it was obvious that who they were showing themselves to be online wasn't actually true. So there's power in being authentic, and there's a way to do that online, and that's why I exist here. Great question, William. Thanks for asking it. All right, next question. Why do you always smell like a dog when you come back from a trip? Oh, that's nice. Well, I guess most recently you're referring to last weekend when I went and visited my parents in Maine, and they have a dog named Timby. Timby's the best. He is some kind of mix with a yellow lab, and he is just high energy, super fun, very clumsy, accidentally will step on you and things like that, but really great. My parents live in Maine. That's actually where I'm originally from, and very rural, very small town. And we haven't always lived in Maine. Maybe I'll get to that in a bit, but that's why I usually come back smelling like a dog, is because I've gone to visit my parents. Next question from William Wallace. Do I have to wear the Santa suit again this year? Well, William, you already know the answer to this. It's either Santa or Mrs. Claus. You get to choose. I have a dress or I have a Santa suit. So you pick. It's your decision. You have total freedom in your choice. All right. Next question. Looks a little bit heavier here. What's in the black bag in the closet way up on the top shelf? All right. So William has known me for 7 years, and I got William at a time in my life where things were shifting dramatically, and he didn't know me at all before then. So I'm going to kind of back up here as soon as I get a drink of water, and going to walk William through where I came from and how I ended up here and why I have this black bag on the top shelf of my closet. So as I said, I'm from Maine. I'm from a small town called Albion. There are more cows than people in this town, and I think there still are. I grew up on a road where most of my relatives lived. It was a very quiet, safe place. Farming was my life and the life of my family. My grandmother owned the farm up the road. My dad worked on it. My uncles worked on it. And a lot of times I would ride with my dad in the tractor just to pass time, especially in the summers. I spent a lot of time outdoors, exploring. Would go out in the woods. Would always find magic in wildlife and exploring the different types of trees. My dad would tell me which ones were which. So there's a lot of education happening in the outdoors, which I still hold dear to my heart. And life was good. I think probably, if I think about anything scary happening, probably the scariest thing that happened was one time Dad had a accident on the farm and he got whacked in the head by one of the overhead fan blades, I think. And I remember that his head was bleeding. I wasn't there, but he came home and my mom bandaged him up, and I just remember that and being so scared that I cried. But that was probably the only traumatic thing that I would say I remember from being a child in Albion. When I was 10 years old, everything changed suddenly. I didn't see it coming. Nobody did. Maybe my dad did a little bit, but we grew up going to church, and my dad was presented with this opportunity to go on a missions trip with a team for 2 weeks, and they went to Ecuador. And I had no idea what that meant. I did not have any sense of the world at all at that point. I just knew my dad was leaving and that he was going to be gone for 2 weeks, and that I could write him letters on the computer. And computers back then were pretty like basic. So Dad went to Ecuador, and when he came back from that 2 week trip, you know, he brought gifts for all of us kids, and he had pictures to show us, and it was just this very foreign land and strange things. And we learned that he ate guinea pig, and it was just like, what is this? What is happening? And pretty soon after he came back, he sat our family down and he said, we're going to become missionaries. Well, I didn't really know what that meant, but what I did understand is that we were ultimately going to be living in Ecuador. So for the next 4 years, my dad prepared for life in Ecuador. We traveled around quite a bit. And the first big move happened when I was 14. We moved to San Jose, Costa Rica. And I had never really seen a city before until that day. We could only bring 2 suitcases of our belongings, so that was a new experience to have to take everything I owned and pick only things that could fit in 2 suitcases. When we landed in Costa Rica, I remember chaos. I remember not understanding what people were saying. You know, I had taken Spanish in middle school, but it did not prepare me for actual conversational Spanish. So there was a lot of chaos during that time. Being in a city, lots of traffic, noises, lights, not understanding signs, language. It was a really hard transition. I would say that I found comfort and safety in other Americans that we ended up meeting. It was not really a time to integrate with the culture there. So things started getting scary in my life. That's what I'm getting at, is that I went from growing up in rural Maine to suddenly being in chaos and feeling afraid, feeling like I didn't have control over things and that suddenly life was turned upside down. There was hardly anything familiar. And we spent a year in Costa Rica, learned Spanish. I found myself gravitating towards soccer. I really focused on playing soccer and doing that as much as possible. It was something that I could do that you didn't need language. And so it was how I connected with people there. And I really had fun and got pretty good at it. So soccer was my gateway into connecting with others. And then we moved to Ecuador. And by the time we got to Ecuador, I was 16. Yeah, 16. That was hard because I had then made connections in Costa Rica and had to leave them behind. And Ecuador was, if I thought Costa Rica was scary, Ecuador was 10 times as scary. There was we lived in South Quito, which was a very poor area. So much crime. It was crime everywhere, but the resounding underlying message that wasn't audible, but it kept being reinforced throughout this time, was that I was unsafe. Every moment I felt unsafe. I was not safe. You know, riding the bus to school, it was a public bus. It's just like city, like smog over the city. You know, people staring at me because I was blonde and blue-eyed, and I looked very different than everybody else. So getting stared at was a whole another factor that I wasn't really used to. But I was exposed to some scary things like political unrest. There were a few times where there was some crisis going on in the city where we had to kind of hunker down and wait and hope that everything was going to be okay. We had some times where there were natural disasters. And I've written about some of these things, but, volcanic eruptions. There were some minor earthquakes, definitely landslides. But fortunately, none of that impacted me, in a major way besides, like, experiencing the fear. I got sick a lot in Ecuador. That was another thing that kind of, like, reinforced the fact that I was unsafe. So it really touched every aspect of my life. Now, I know you're probably thinking, like, wow, like, that sounds horrible. Like, you just had the worst time. There were moments where I witnessed wonderful things. I saw beauty in ways that I had never seen before. I lived in the mountains. I went down to the coast. Just the wildlife was very different. Just a lot of incredible things. I had incredible experiences, and I did meet some really wonderful people. But all the while, that message was being reinforced. You're unsafe. You're not safe. Like, you're in danger. And that played a really big part on my my outlook of life for probably the next 2 decades. So I graduated from high school in Ecuador and came back to the States, lost my way for a while. I did go back to Ecuador as a teacher, and I was there for 3 years teaching health and phys ed at the same school that I graduated from. So that was really special to do that, and it was familiar at the time. But eventually I got burned out. And I came back to the States and just spent a lot of time drifting, trying to figure out what was my purpose in life, and really not understanding how unsafe I felt all the time and what impact that was having on my ability to connect with people. So things kind of came to a head by the time I landed here in New Hampshire. And it gets real dramatic. I have also written about this story if you want to check out my blog on my website, but I'll tell it briefly here. I had somebody in my life that would not leave and kind of took over. I was no longer the owner of my life. I was no longer the owner of my decisions. And it was 2 years of running from this person and then them chasing me and finding me and me giving in and giving up. And I really got to a low point, just feeling hopeless and isolated. And I came to New Hampshire, I think it was 2019. I came to New Hampshire to visit my brother, Kevin. And Kevin happened to be living in Lisbon at the time. And he was the pastor of a church there. And I came to visit him and really to get away from this person that wouldn't leave me alone, that I had filed a restraining order on. Kevin didn't really know that situation, but he had offered me a place to stay and come visit. So I came to visit, and I will never forget the day that he drove me to Littleton to show me this cute little town. And we drove down Main Street. We didn't even get out anywhere. But he drove me through Main Street, and I remember looking over and seeing the bridge and just how quaint it was with the river and Mount Eustis in the background. And I just remember feeling this feeling I hadn't felt before of like peace and maybe home, even though I didn't recognize what that was. And so we kept driving. We drove through. He took me over to Bethlehem. Bethlehem was beautiful, coming up over the hill, seeing the mountains. This was in the winter, so it was really spectacular. I don't think I had ever felt that feeling, even seeing the mountains in Ecuador. And there was just something about this place that called to me. And so that was a magical day. And then I don't know how much time had passed, but this person that had been pursuing me ended up coming here to New Hampshire. And as he was driving through Franconia Notch during a snowstorm, he flipped his vehicle, and the state troopers were on the scene. When that accident happened, this person called me immediately and said, "You need to come pick me up." Now, at the time, I was in a very different headspace. I was doing whatever he asked. I was afraid of him. I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't do what he said. So even though there was a restraining order against him, I decided that I needed to go pick him up from this accident in the middle of a snowstorm. So I got in my car in Lisbon, and I drove up 302, and I got on the ramp to 93 South. And just as I was getting on the ramp to 93 South, I got a phone call from a restricted number, and I answered it. And there was a female voice on the other end that sounded really stern, and she said, "Is this Amanda McKeen?" And I said, "Yes." And my heart was pounding. I felt like I was in trouble. And she said, "You need to turn around right now." She said, "You're coming to pick up so-and-so, right?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "You need to turn around right now. He is being taken into custody for violating a restraining order." She's like, "You do have a restraining order against him, right?" "Yes, I do." And so I turned my car around, and I remember that moment. It was like the earth broke open for me. Suddenly, there was this bright light, this realization that I was no longer unsafe, that I was protected, and that I was free. And so I turned my car around, and it wasn't all processed in one day, believe me, but that was the day when everything changed for me. I got my life back, and I realized what a gift I had been given, and I really love the New Hampshire State Police for that reason. So from that day forward began the healing process for me of going decades of believing that I was unsafe and in danger all the time to suddenly believing that I was the opposite. I was actually safe, and I was free, and I was not in danger. So back to William Wallace's question, what's in the black bag in the closet way up on the top shelf? Part of that healing process for me was purchasing a handgun. I have a Sig Sauer P320. I love it. There was, time for me to spend training, to feel empowered, to feel equipped to protect myself. And even though that's not something that it's not a go-to, and it's not where I find my feeling of safety, it was part of my healing. So I do have that in my closet, and it's a good thing. So I know that's really heavy, but that's why I am here. That's why I ended up here. And I think that's why I'm so connected with this place, is because it's where I suddenly started believing that I was safe and protected and loved and cared for. And that made all the difference in my life to starting to connect with people. When you feel unsafe, you don't want to talk to people. You don't want to connect. You just want to hide. And so as I've started understanding that I am safe, I have been given opportunities to connect with people in meaningful ways here in the North Country, and I absolutely love it. William asks me, why is there always so much gear piled up in the entryway? I love this question. I have I have a couple bikes, I have snowshoes, all the winter layers. You wouldn't believe how many jackets I have hanging up. It's ridiculous. But I'm not bragging about what I have. I'm just more describing that one of the pieces of healing for me is feeling prepared. There was being in Ecuador, being in Costa Rica, being in places where I felt afraid. A lot of times it was because I was unprepared. So that preparedness is definitely a core part of who I am at this point. And that means that I'm going to have all the proper gear if I'm going to go play outside. Outside, you heard me say from when I was a child that outside was a significant part of who I was and my upbringing, and that hasn't changed. So it's another reason why I love being here, is because I feel like a kid again. I feel like I get to go play. And so I take that, I combine it with being prepared. Naturally, I was drawn into search and rescue. And I've been on the AFSAR team for 2 years now. I've gone on a few missions and learned a lot about myself, but mostly just honored to know the other people on the team and to have the chance to learn from them and their experiences and their skills. There's some fantastic people on search and rescue with some really wonderful hearts. So I just feel so grateful that I have that opportunity to learn from the best people up here. And I've had a few of them on my show, which has been really wonderful. If you haven't listened to them, I would suggest listening to Paul Cormier. He was one of my first guests, and my very first guest, I think, was Mike Sharam. And both of those guys have some really great stories. Alan Clark also was interviewed. He founded PEMISAR, so he's another one you could listen to. But that's why there's always so much gear piled up in the entryways, because I love the outdoors. I love being prepared, and I am definitely part of search and rescue. William is now asking me, why haven't we moved in so long? William was with me in Lisbon. That's when I got him. And I think one of the reasons why, William, you and I are so deeply connected is because of the time that you came into my life was when I was recently free and no longer in danger. And William was my, I guess we'll call him an emotional support animal, but he's so much more than that. So we moved from Lisbon, and then we moved to Littleton, and we lived in one other place besides where we are now. So he's moved a couple of times. But where we are now, we've been for, I think, for 4 years. And it's a really great spot for us. And I really have a lot of pride in the fact that I haven't moved again. A couple weeks ago, I had Mike Claflin on here, and Mike and I were talking about the phenomenon that happens with kids who start moving around early in life and keep moving over and over again, and how that kind of develops in you this desire to keep moving and to not root in to the community. And so I've really had to resist that a little bit and really focus on rooting in here. And that means that I'm not going to just up and move again. It means that I'm going to pay attention, and when things are right, then that's when we're going to go. So, William, I know you meant when can we go home right now, because you're probably tired of this. Actually, he's not even sitting here with me anymore. I don't know where he went. But we'll go home soon. We got a little bit of time left. I know I said a lot today. I know I opened up quite a bit, and that was what I was scared of doing, but honestly, it's the most empowering thing to share my story. I remember meeting with somebody over coffee early this year, and when I shared that story in maybe less words than that, this person said, "You probably shouldn't tell people that." And that always sat with me, because it was like, why? Is there something that I need to feel shame about? I mean, I don't feel that anymore. I think I did for a while, but not anymore. I think it's empowering. And one thing I realized through my radio show is that you never know what people have been through and what they're going through. And sometimes we're led to say things that are meant for somebody's ears and meant for somebody's heart. So today I showed up with that understanding that what I'm sharing today is for a reason and that it's going to help somebody. I love this community. I love how I've been able to connect this year. At the beginning of this year, I wrote down my intention that I was going to make new connections. And I can happily say that I've done that. And I've been able to connect other people together. And that is just the most wonderful feeling ever. I got an email last week from one of my clients. Her name's Kristen. And she sent me this email, and it was super long. I don't usually get long emails from Kristen. But she sent me an email, and she said, "I had this thing happen, and I thought Amanda needs to hear this story." Kristen didn't ask me to read this on the radio. She didn't ask me to do anything with it. She just wanted to tell me what had happened because it was so incredible. And I think it's a great depiction of the power of our community. And so I would love to read that story to you guys today. And I was going to ask William, but I don't think he cares at all. So I'm going to read this story. And I didn't change any of the words. I'm taking this exactly from Kristen's email, and I'm just going to read it. So anytime I say the word "I," just know that this is Kristen speaking. So here's Kristen's story. Yesterday, we hosted a meeting between Community Financial Services Group and CNB and decided we'd order lunch from the Inkwell for everyone. I called in our order in the morning and arrived around 1:20 in the afternoon for what was expected to be a routine order pickup. Except it turned into so much more. As I was standing in line waiting for our order, I noticed I was missing my wedding rings. I immediately realized that when I got out of my car in the parking lot, I lost my wedding rings in the snowbank beside where I parked. White gold rings in freshly fallen, glistening white snow. Think needle in a haystack situation. I stayed calm. I waited until our order was ready, then headed back out to the parking lot, remaining optimistic that this would be a relatively simple search. I knew the location where they had dropped, so how hard could it be, right? Wrong. I carefully searched just by looking around, thinking if I started digging around in the snow, I might bury them, making things even harder. No luck. I began lightly swiping layers of snow, thinking they would be just under the surface. Still no luck. I'm the type of person who absolutely hates asking for help, but finally I had a brain blast and thought, if I just go get some hot water from inside, Surely I can melt the snow and reveal the rings. I head back inside, still not ready to share the silly mistake I had made. So I say I've lost something in the snow and asked for a couple cups of hot water, cash in hand, ready for them to ring up my order. Instead of cashing me out, the woman behind the counter offers to let me borrow a pitcher of hot water and never says a word about payment. I thank her and ensure I'll be right back to return it. Hot water in hand, I make my way back to the snow and start pouring. Still no luck. At this point, I'm crouched down, sifting through slushy, muddy snow with my bare hands, covering the parking spot in a grid-like pattern to make sure I don't miss a spot. I still cannot find them. People have now started to notice the crazy lady who's pretty much turned the snow into a full-on crime scene. People are rolling down car windows and asking if everything's all right. I just tell them I've dropped something, but not to worry, I'll find it soon enough. I then realize that I still have everyone's lunch sitting in my car waiting for delivery. I bring the pitcher back inside, handing it over the counter like it's now full of my pride as I admit what's really happened. I tell them I have to leave, but that I'll be back shortly to continue the search, and so if they see me back looking around, that's why. I expected an, "Oh no, I hope you find them," type of response. But without hesitation, they immediately offer to help. They block off the parking spot for me until I can get back. I thought this was such a kind offer, to block off a front row parking spot during business hours just to help someone they don't even know. I leave, drop off lunch, and head to purchase a small handheld metal detector before returning, again searching for another hour or so before coming to the conclusion this isn't helping to solve the problem. I decide to call my husband and have him bring buckets from home. Now the plan has switched to scooping all the snow into the buckets, melting the snow at home, and revealing the rings in the bottom of some brown, dirty slush. I go back inside, telling the staff I have to go back to the office, but I'll return to meet my husband once he brings the buckets. When I come back around 3 p.m., the coffee shop is closing. I expect the parking lot to be empty and for me and my husband to make this into a two-man show. As I pull into the parking lot, I see my husband unloading a shovel and buckets in the parking lot, and one of the employees out there crouched down, searching through the slush with nothing more than rubber gloves from their kitchen. I'm blown away. I could have never imagined that this woman I didn't know would be coming to my rescue at the end of a long shift, when I'm sure she was ready to head home and enjoy her own personal time. We're now all joining forces. Then out comes another employee with big buckets of hot water to help melt more of the snow. A local bystander has also joined in at this point to help and share an inspiring story of when he lost his own wedding band years ago and found it months later. All of these people are strangers to me but are showing up to help. This is something I would have never asked them to do, but I never had to. They just jumped into action. Another hour of searching passes. We're starting to lose sunlight at this point, but I haven't lost hope. We pile the buckets into the car and think surely we'll find it in one of those later tonight. Before we part ways, one of the employees reached out to her father. He has an actual metal detector and has offered to let us use it in the morning if our efforts don't pay off tonight. She takes my phone number and calls me later to let me know he'll drop off the equipment in the morning by 8:30 in case we need to continue the search. We go home. We melt the snow. 4 5-gallon buckets of snow. We find nothing more than some rocks and dirt. I still haven't lost hope. I go back to the inkwell this morning, more buckets in hand, ready to collect more snow and pick up my coffee order. The same crew greets me as I walk in, anxiously waiting for me to share the good news, but unfortunately no good news to share yet. I leave with my coffee and buckets of slush, letting them know I'll be back later once the metal detector has arrived from this wonderful employee's father. A few hours pass and I do just that. I have never once used a legit metal detector, but here I am, back on the hunt for these rings, equipment in hand. No luck. It beeps as I get closer to the storm drain, which of course is made of metal, but I haven't got any hits anywhere else, so this is my last hope. The employee's father and owner of the metal detector arrives and offers to help. Again, a complete stranger to me. He sweeps the same areas I have, still not getting any hits. We both share a look of dwindling hope. I scoop the snow next to the drain into the 5-gallon pail, thinking maybe, just maybe, the beeps we were getting were a hint that the rings were in there, and not all due to the storm drain. I bring the buckets back to the office, and before I can get settled back into my work for the day, I get a Facebook message from one of the employees. "We have your rings." He had continued his search efforts with the metal detector after I drove away and found them. I simply cannot put into words how truly amazed I am at these people's acts of kindness. The Inkwell provided us with a fantastic lunch, but also provided me with a renewed sense of community and realization that we may hear a continual loop of things going wrong in the world around us, but there are still so many people willing to lend a helping hand without ever being asked. Everyone remarked that I stayed surprisingly calm during this whole situation, and that's true. Because I know that in a world where people are genuinely just barely scraping by to make ends meet, all while facing the realization that the holidays are quickly approaching, that my problem at hand was minuscule in comparison to the issues faced by so many people around us. The rings are valuable to me, but the true acts of kindness I received are worth far more. And that is a true story told by Kristen Kilby, who actually works right upstairs at Community Financial Services Group. So Kristen, thank you for sharing that story with us today. So great. It's one of the reasons why I love this community. I think we all have stories of how we've been helped by other people when they didn't have to. So speaking of connection and community, we are going to round out this hour with me sharing events from the White Mountains directory. This is something that I started doing last week and should have done the week before, but I was sick. But the White Mountains directory is an online directory I created to help connect our region here in the White Mountains together. So small businesses, nonprofits, organizations can sign up for free, and they can actually list any events that they have going on for free. And I promised in the month of December that I would announce any events listed on the community calendar during my show. So this is our events portion. We're going to start with Littleton artist D2 Owls. I mentioned this last week. In the month of December, all of December, she has one of her Elemental Explorations series drawings on exhibit at the Arts Center in Dover. So if you are headed to Dover or you're around Dover, stop in and check out her art. She is an amazing artist, and I have had her on my show before. Oh, there's William. Okay. I know, Will. We're going to go soon. This Thursday at 5:30 p.m. there is a December Paint Night by Art Maven Studio. I think that's in Lancaster. here's what it says. Perfect gift incoming. Create your very own special live edge wood sign. Who doesn't love an adorable gnome bringing holiday cheer? All supplies and expert instruction with Lisa from Stir Up the Paint, New Hampshire. Cozy up with creativity and connection and celebrate our last collaboration of 2025. Special holiday pricing on $35 per person, and BYOB is A-OK. So that is Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Thursday at 6:30 p.m. we have a recurring event. It's open mic night at Peaks Pub at the Franconia Inn. Come join us in our pub every Thursday to hear local artists showcase their musical talent. Peaks Pub will be open 5:30 to 8:30, serving our full dinner menu. Musician sign-up is at 6. Performances are from 6:30 to 8:30. Come to play, listen, and enjoy the fun atmosphere. We hope to see you there. So that is Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Friday at 5 p.m. This is the big one I want you guys to remember. Everybody listening, you are all very much welcome and invited. NCCR is having their holiday party at the Rocks in Bethlehem. It is going to be a super fun time. You get to meet all of the different DJs that collaborate here at the station. Please join us for our annual holiday potluck party to celebrate community radio and the season. This year, we're honored to have live music from Ward Hayden and the Outliers, the Mother Pluckers, and the Doctors of Sound. So if you want to come, keep in mind it's a potluck, bring something to share, and plan on having a super fun time. I am going to be there as well. I'm looking forward to having many of my guests join in. They've all been especially invited. So if you wanted to come and meet me, and you want to come meet some of the guests that I've had on, so this is your chance. So that's Friday at 5 p.m. Saturday and Sunday at 3 p.m., the Voices of Christmas is being put on by White Mountain Voices. This is a festive holiday concert featuring local talent and timeless music. White Mountains Voices, the premier community choir of the White Mountains, invites the public to a heartwarming holiday concert, Voices of Christmas, featuring masterworks by Bach and Vivaldi, American spirituals, and classic carols. The concerts will be held Saturday in Gorham at the Medallion Opera House, and then Sunday at the First Congregational Church of Littleton. The choir is joined by an ensemble of regional professional instrumentalists and showcases outstanding vocal soloists, including Min Young Song, Karen Renner, Andrew Hudson Sabins, and Oliver Scott, all of whom are active music educators in Grafton County and beyond. The concert concludes with a traditional holiday sing-along of cherished favorites, such as White Christmas and Silver Bells. So that is all the events happening between now and next Tuesday. A lot of good stuff happening, a lot of fun opportunities for connection, and we are at the end of the program here. William, do you have anything else you'd like to say? I think your questions were okay. A couple of them were a little bit inappropriate, which we'll have to talk about later. I'm just making sure that I asked all the questions that he asked me, why don't I make my bed every morning? I kind of skipped over that one. I don't think that warrants too much of an answer, Sir William. But if you must know, some mornings I wake up feeling amazing and like I've got my stuff together and I feel organized, so that's when I make my bed. And then some mornings I wake up and I feel like I need to spend my energy elsewhere, so I don't make my bed. Oh, all right. Guys, I am just so grateful for the opportunity to share my story today. I'm so grateful for those of you who are supportive and encouraging and who appreciate my show. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, I'm trying to think who we have on. I think it's Greg. It is Greg. Next week at Tuesday, Tuesday at 10 a.m., we're going to have Greg Williams here with us. And Greg is no stranger to radio. He's no stranger to our community. I met him a couple months ago, so I'm really looking forward to diving in with him. And thank you again for tuning in today, and hope you guys have a fantastic day. And I hope that I see you this Friday at 5 p.m. at the holiday party. Don't forget, the Rocks in Bethlehem, and bring some food to share. Have a great day, guys.